very research-savvy institution, as you would imagine. And sometimes you'd have an investigator who would say, well, I really don't want Dr. Smith to review this because he's my arch enemy, so I know what I'll do. I'll make it ironclad. I'm going to ask, write in a letter to have Dr. Smith review this grant. And that's just so crazy. It's fine to say you don't want certain people to review the grant, but you can't ask for specific reviewer disqualification. Okay? So anyway, you can request assignment to a study section, and if that study section needs added expertise, ask them to add ad hoc reviewers. It's a very common thing to add ad hoc reviewers. If you don't request assignment, how's it going to work? Well, here's how it works. There are people who are called referral officers. And the referral officers, here's where it always seems so dicey to me. Referral officers are scientists from the NIH. They're employed by the NIH. But here's the thing. There are about 12 or so referral officers, so the people who decide which study section, which institute's going to review every grant. But these people have another function. I said there are about 100 different standing study sections. Each one is headed up by what's called a scientific review officer, an SRO. 12 of these guys do double duty. They're also SROs of standing study sections. Well, in this crazy grants environment, you're an SRO, you're the head of the study section. It's part of your job to send a summary of what happened in review to each of the applicants whose grants was discussed at study section. You're an SRO, you're only human. It's your determination which study section gets a grant. You know that your study section is always overloaded. There are always 120 grants there. You're looking at this grant, which could go this way, but it also kind of could apply to another study section. Human nature, you will dump that grant. You'll unload it on another study section. It's human nature. You're going to protect yourself. You're not looking for another grant to review. You're actually looking for grants to unload. To protect yourself, attach a letter. I would appreciate it if you assign my study section, my grant, to the following study section. In general, these requests are absolutely they're absolutely accepted. Honestly, from the perspective of one of these referral officers, it's one fewer grants they have to think about in terms of numbers. And I don't know why these numbers stick in my mind. It's kind of that random, irrelevant information that you sometimes remember. Again, the NIH did a recent study as to these letters and how often they work. And 87% of study section requests are accepted, and virtually 100% of requests for an institute. So attach a letter. Again, control what you can control. So the assignment criteria used by the referral officer, again, this is the desk of the referral officer. This is what it looks like. They look at the title, the abstract, the cover letter. Write the cover letter. There's no excuse not to. Keep it short. Such and such study section that I'm asking to review my grant has several scientists with research interests, publications relevant to my area of research. Therefore, I would appreciate it if you sent it to this study section for review. As I said before, you cannot identify specific reviewers. It's fine to say, I would appreciate it if Dr. Smith, who is a member of this study section, not review my grant. When you make that statement, you can say simply something like, Dr. Smith and I disagree about methodology. We have different perspectives about techniques, methodology, whatever it may be. You then don't go into a blow-by-blow description of the last time you saw him at a conference and he took a cheap shot at you and da-da-da. Just one sentence. We disagree scientifically. Your review committee certainly understands this. Everybody has one person that they disagree with. You can have two people that you disagree with. But what you cannot do is look at that study section roster and then attach a cover letter saying, I would appreciate it if Dr. A, B, C, and D don't review this grant. We have scientific disagreements. I mean, you have scientific disagreements with half the study section. If you have all of these disagreements at some point, it is you, right? So, requesting the Institute for funding. The Institute, few people request Institute. It's much more common to request a study section. Study sections, we'll see in a minute, looks at science. Institute is going to look at, does your research further their mission? So they're going to make the ultimate decision about, they'll look at the study section review and they'll decide whether your grant meets their mission and whether indeed they recommend you for funding. And you think, well, what's the point of requesting an institute? Institutes, again, there are 27 of them, give or take, and some of them are by disease, National Cancer Institute, and some of them are body part, National Eye Institute. Well, here's what you want to know about the institutes, and you definitely do want to be aware of who's funding what. The institutes, you would think that every institute funds the same percentage of grants, that 10% of all grants that go to the NIH are funded. It's logical, right? The top 10%, but it doesn't work that way. Some institutes have more money than other institutes. And the amount of money they have is determined by a lot of different factors, sometimes including how successful lobbyists are who are affiliated with the particular diseases that you're looking at. But you can have huge disparity in the percentile of grants that end up getting funded. So let's say you have a grant that has to do with, I forget if I include an example or not, but the very, very easy one to talk about is swallowing disorders. It's a common problem, obviously, in the elderly. Swallowing disorders. That could be germane to the National Institute on Aging. A lot of elderly people have swallowing disorders. It could be germane to the National Institute for Neurologic Disorders and Stroke. Swallowing disorders are certainly a part of some neurologic problems. Well, we can find out that NINDS, neurologic disorders and stroke, may have a significantly higher funding percentile than National Institute on Aging. When I say significantly higher, I don't mean they funded the 50th percentile, but you can certainly have some institutes that are funding up to the 15th, 18th percentile, while another one is down at the 10th. Be aware of what the cutoff is, because then if your grant could be applicable to two different institutes, here's how I would handle it. Only one study section can ever evaluate your grant for the science. But if what you're writing about could touch on the missions of two different institutes, like swallowing disorders, I would say the research proposed here is relevant to the missions of two different institutes. NINDS, NIA. Therefore, in terms of the institute assignment, I would appreciate it if this were considered for dual consideration for funding by NIA and NINDS. So again, dual consideration for funding by whatever the two institutes are. One study section and one only, but two institutes can consider you for funding. So it pays to know, and it's easy to find out looking at the NIH website at how much money each of these institutes have, and they publish, what percentile they're cutting off on. And you would be surprised, or at least I was surprised at how variable it is. And sometimes it's just like there's no rhyme or reason to it. So how to determine the best study section for your research? This website is really very helpful. It's the description of the NIH, what are called the Chartered Review Panels. Chartered Review Panels means it's standing study sections. The NIH always is creating new study sections if they have like a request for a certain type of proposal. For example, when you look at that NIH guide, which we talked about how important that NIH guide is, oftentimes you'll see set aside money. What I mean by that is the NIH will say, we have a request for applications for new techniques to treat brain tumors. That means that they're only going to consider, for that particular request for applications, they will own that pot of money will only go to grants that are concerned with new techniques for treating brain tumors. Okay? So it's